Right. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see all of you joining this call. It is Member Appreciation Month, and we are on our last day of programming. So I want to welcome you to our Saturday morning virtual tour. I'm, oh, my video has been spotlighted. Welcome to our Saturday morning virtual tour. I'm Aaliyah Vinnick. I'm the events manager at the Science Museum of Minnesota. And as you know, this event is part of our Member Appreciation Month. It's our way of saying thank you for your continued support of our mission to make science education accessible to everyone. We'll be running this program with a few different presenters, and the best way to see them is by choosing speaker view, and that's in the upper right of your Zoom screen. I also want to remind you that we'll have time for a Q&A towards the conclusion of the program, and you can use the chat window in the bottom of your screen to share your thoughts and questions. Thank you. Today, we are delighted to welcome you to be among the first to see the museum's updated race exhibition and the bias inside us. It's a new exhibit developed in partnership with the Smithsonian. We're joined by two special guests to virtually guide you this morning, starting with race. And to set the tone, I am going to stop my share because I would like to have my colleague, Guy Dalby-Thomas, share just a very short preview of the exhibit. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Guy. Isn't that a nice little preview of the exhibit? It kind of just gives me a sense of what we're going to be seeing today. So now, to tell us more about the exhibition, I'd like to introduce our first speaker this morning, Joanne Jones-Rizzi. Joanne is our museum's Vice President of Science, Equity, and Education, and leads science and education initiatives, ensuring that they achieve maximum impact and are equitably accessible for all of our audiences. Before coming to the Science Museum of Minnesota, Joanne was an exhibit developer and cultural program director at the Boston Children's Museum, where she led an initiative that addressed the institution-wide politics of inclusiveness, ranging the full spectrum from community partners to the museum's board of trustees. She draws on her experience to advise museums nationally and internationally on culture, identity, anti-racism, exhibition development, and community engagement. Joanne has also written or co-written several books and numerous articles exploring ideas related to identity, race, and community. Welcome, Joanne.
Hi, everybody. Hi, it's so nice. I can see some of you. Nice to see you, and thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. So 14 years ago, just to provide a little bit of context, 14 years ago, in support of the Science Museum's commitment to creating a more equitable world, we worked with the American Anthropological Association to create Race, Are We So Different? The exhibition opened in 2007 and toured the country for 10 years and was hosted by over 50 museums, inviting millions of visitors to better understand the science, history, and lived experience of race. We're really proud to relaunch the exhibition, and it has updated content and a refreshed design. Race is a human-made concept that is not based in science, yet the idea of race has dramatically shaped our world and continues to do so. The exhibition is an opportunity to connect with people around what may be America's biggest challenge. So just keep in mind as we walk through, and this is a very, very cursory, it's an overview because you're not going to be able to see everything in the 9 minutes that I have to do this. So I'm going to, the big idea of the exhibition, we have redesigned it, we've refreshed the content, but the big idea remains the same. Race isn't real, but biologically, race isn't real biologically, but racism is real. And the exhibit is still organized around the big themes of biology, history, and what we call at the museum, the contemporary lived experience. Okay, let's, so this, so some of the images as we walk through will look familiar, and some things will look really different than the last time you may have seen it. So again, remember those three themes of history, biology, history, and the lived experience of race. So the exhibition, let's go back just one more, go back. Thank you. So the exhibition is different right at the front door. Getting people into this gallery has been a little bit of a challenge for us, not because people don't want to see the content. I think people came to the museum, wanted to see it, and couldn't find it. It's behind these glass doors. It's behind these glass doors not to keep people out, not to, because we want to keep you in this place or trap you in this place. It's because this gallery that it's in is a climate control gallery, and their objects, the exhibit shares the space with the We Move and We Stay exhibition, which has beautiful objects from the museum's collection, and we want to protect them. And so that's why this is a climate control gallery, which is why it's behind these glass doors. So as you see, can we move next slide? Thank you. So the exhibit voice, so the tone and how we're communicating, is emboldened by our commitment to equity and this idea that museums, nothing is neutral. The exhibition has a point of view, and our point of view is based around those three themes, and we want to address very accurately and what people are feeling, this racism and how people experience racism. And as you can see on the right, the exhibit is now, the refreshed exhibit is now in English and Spanish, as are all of our exhibits at the museum. So it's bilingual, which means we've had to shorten it, shorten the words, make it tighter. And so this is the sort of entry, the entry panel. So we want to include, when we talk about the history of the idea, the creation of this idea, that racism is not real in some ways. We want to talk about the history in the United States and how this history has impacted lots of communities and lots of people with varying identities. And in this slide, and that we're talking about images of Indigenous people and how people have been portrayed, how white people have identified Indigenous people. And we call out racism in this panel, which is it's a departure from what we did in the last. We called it out, not as overtly as this. And we want people to think about the stereotypes of Indigenous people and how they've appeared. It's ubiquitous as kind of noble savages, conniving scoundrels, and are still used to this day. It's changing, but still used as sports mascots. So the old exhibition had four components that talked about, tried to explain the history of how this idea became perpetuated and embedded in all of in our thinking. They were creating race, inventing whiteness, human mismeasure, and separate and unequal. So we've condensed all of that. These were kind of timelines that were very dense. There were lots of words, lots of images, and really difficult to read. You really had to make a commitment to do that. And they were impossible to update. So these timelines have been converted to a digital format that's more accessible, and we can change them as we need to. And throughout the exhibition, we've updated all of the statistics, and which is fantastic, because before we did this, the statistics were from 2007. Next slide. So we created a stronger, more interactive emphasis on biological relatedness. We wanted to commute this idea of that we are all truly connected, not only through environmental events and politics, but through our genes. And this idea that race isn't biologically real. So this, what you're seeing, and for some of you may remember, this used to be a big floor map that kind of talked about this idea of movement and movement over time. So we've got this interactive, as you can see on the big screen. So and we want people to understand that even though we talk about racial groups, that there are not genes that are found in only one racial group and not in others. So the idea for this, we want people to understand that we exist along a continuum, and we're much more alike than we're different. So this, we're talking about this idea that, again, you've heard me say that race is not real and racism is real. So the revised exhibition really looks at societal concerns, environmental justice, food availability and food deserts, economic security, education, safety for people, and the problems are interrelated, and for some people, those problems or those concerns are invisible. So this is a slide about food insecurity that's very relevant to right now. It's food insecurity in Minnesota among ethnic groups. So you can see with people who identified as Black that food insecurity is very real for communities. And as you can see at the bottom, the lowest group are people who identify as white. So one of the things that's important to note about the Refresh exhibition is that it's not traveling. So we could make it more Minnesota specific and tell, so the previous slide about food insecurity in Minnesota is something that we would have probably not done in the past because it had to travel. And so somebody in, I don't know, somebody in Tampa, Florida might have looked at this and said, well, I'm not that interested in food insecurity in Minnesota. What does it look like in Tampa? We've been able to make this version of the exhibition is very much Minnesota. Okay, so this is something, this area that you're seeing talks about the criminal justice system, which is something that was not included in the last exhibition, and we regretted it. And we talked about this is what's missing. So in this, in the U.S. is fourth in the world in terms of total population, yet we house 25% of the world's prisoners, and they're disproportionately people of color. This area tries to address the disproportionality, the criminal justice system. There are a lot of statistics in here which I can barely see, so I imagine that you can't. You have to come and see it. So this is you may remember this. This is a sort of a stoop, which was supposed to talk about housing. And in this area where we are still talking about housing, and in Minnesota there are high rates of home ownership. There's excellent education. There's a high standard of living, but that is not the case for everyone. So in this area we talk about racial covenants. We talk about how certain ethnic groups were prohibited by law, by these covenants, from owning homes in certain neighborhoods, and that has impacted what our cities look like today, and where people live right now. So again, this sort of perpetuates this idea of what is visible and what is invisible. So this is something that people don't know, and we want to highlight that. So this is last, and this is what we call the memorial. And this was something that we were scheduled to open this exhibition at the end of June. And because of the pandemic, we had to close. And when we when we started thinking about reopening, we realized that things had really changed, and we wanted this exhibition to reflect some of what had happened in this community and reflect what was happening all over the world, all over this country, and kind of and there were demonstrations all over the world about what was happening, what had happened in Minnesota to George Floyd. So this is we on this in this area, you see over 8 minute and 46-second time, which is the amount of time that Derek Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck, and the names of the 263 Black people who have died during police interactions in 2020 appear. So it's a quiet space. It's designed to reflect and to think about all those names, and to think about how long 8 minutes and 46 seconds is, and to remember these people and say their names. So the science is all of us is it's a campaign that it's a year-long campaign that exists, that's consists of 4 exhibitions: race, the race exhibit, the science, the bias is inside us, which you're going to hear about, skin, living armor, and green card STEM voices. So throughout this year, you'll be able to participate in programming and events that focus on putting our museum values into practice, and to challenge concepts of race, identity, and equity within the context of science. So we're so grateful to you for your support and your participation as members, and thank you for joining us. So there's a lot of hard work ahead of us, and it'll take each and every one of us. So please visit this exhibition through online content. And now I can say, and please come and see it, because we are open. So in this next, we have a short video that features a museum friend, Alex West Steinman, who is the CEO and co-founder of the Coven. And we invited her to come and walk through the exhibition.
I'd love to walk through this exhibit with my family. I have 2 young kids, 4 and 6, and I think it's important for them to experience and learn about race and its origins, not just from a textbook. I think it's important for our children to understand that race is not something that they are just born with. It's something that was constructed to make them powerless and to have some people, white people, have more power than others. The updated exhibit is incredibly current and up to date. I think it is so amazing how they were able to capture not just things that have happened in the past, but our visions for the future. And, you know, the fact that we actually have the power to make change and vision for a better tomorrow, because we now understand how far we've come, and yet how little we've how little progress we've made over time. I think it's really important that people understand um, you know, the science behind it, the science behind why our skin color is the color that it is, as opposed to diving into a conversation on race when you don't even quite understand where that concept came from. So I was really energized by kind of all of the amazing history and the amazing science that they put behind it in the upfront of the exhibit, so that by the time you get to the end of it, where you're talking about racial inequality in schools and in the penal system and police brutality, by the time you get to that conversation, you now understand. You can't unsee what's happened over the course of, you know, hundreds of years. I think this exhibit matters because we live in a moment in history that we'll look back on and see what were the decisions that we made now that have led us to the next 10 years, how we've decided to take action to really bring justice for all, to really truly value Black lives and brown lives and Indigenous lives. I'll be really interested to see how we continue to use this as a place for education and how this will change perspectives a bit and help people have difficult conversations and their own personal reckoning or their own conversations within their families once they've kind of gone through the exhibit and really understand kind of the history of race in America and here locally. I really appreciated the local voices that they were able to highlight, and I think it could help change, the future of race in Minnesota and the U.S.
So in my years of working at museums, I've had the pleasure of collaborating with museums around the world. And thanks to the great vision of the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service, otherwise known as SITES, we at the Science Museum of Minnesota are proud to be a premier host on an important new exhibition, The Bias Inside Us. The Bias Inside Us is a traveling exhibition and a community engagement project in collaboration with the Smithsonian that is designed to raise awareness about the social science and psychology of implicit bias and how bias impacts the world around us. And now to say more about this wonderful exhibition, I'd like to introduce you to Odia Wood-Kreuger, who's the Community Outreach Coordinator for the project through SITES. Thanks, Odia.
Hey folks, thanks for being here today, and thanks to Joanne and the team at the Science Museum of Minnesota for bringing us all here together today. This project's roots are in the Twin Cities. Discussion started in 2012 with the creation of a nonprofit called Tolerance in Motion, whose aim was to create a mobile exhibition on a bus that would travel from place to place and invite communities to discuss intolerance and unpack bias. Through conversations with the now project director, Laura Zell, and Joanne, the idea was pitched to the Smithsonian to take it out of a bus and into community organizations and museums around the country. We're grateful for all of Joanne's guidance and appreciate the ongoing partnership we have with the Science Museum of Minnesota. Here's a quick glimpse of the exhibition. Thanks for that, Guy. So the term implicit bias has been getting more and more traction in recent years. Just this week, during Merrick Garland's confirmation hearing, Senator John Neely Kennedy asked, "Does that mean I'm a racist no matter what I do or what I think? I'm a racist, but I don't know I'm a racist?" Spoiler, everyone has biases. It's part of being human. This exhibition isn't about picking sides or pitting folks against one another. It's about understanding that we are products of how we were raised, how we are influenced by media, and the cultural teachings we live by. Over the next few minutes, I'll introduce you to different parts of the exhibition. Research shows that by age 5, children are already developing biases as a result of watching the people around them. In creating this exhibition, we designed it for middle school through college-age students, but it is certainly great information for everyone. And since The Bias Inside Us will be touring around the country, we wanted to ensure everyone started out with the same foundational knowledge. This particular section breaks down the science of bias, reinforcing again the concept that everyone has bias. This section includes some fun interactives, an optical illusion, media pieces, and a 3D model of a brain. It's also in this section that we talk about mind bugs. Our brains are hardwired to make snap judgments, to offer protection, or to make decisions quickly. And those judgments can be wrong even after we prove otherwise. This image is called Illusion at a Coffee Wall. And it's a great example to show how our brains attempt to make sense of things. At first glance, the horizontal lines are slanted. They're actually perfectly parallel. You can hold a paper up to your screen right now to prove that the lines are straight, but our brains still try to convince us that the lines are wavy. Next slide. Perfect. So part of what makes implicit bias so tricky is that our brains are constantly picking up clues to help us make those snap decisions. In this section, we highlight products or inventions that are inherently biased. They might preclude someone from using a product, or they could favor a particular ethnicity, or even ignore the lived experiences of particular groups of people. These days, we're seeing several instances where problematic imagery or product names are getting changed. Folks are stepping up and saying, I'm looking at the history of this product and I don't like what it stands for. And some of you may have noticed in recent news, the Cherokee Nation has recently asked Jeep to stop using its classic trademark. But bias goes deeper than deciding not to buy Uncle Ben's rice or Aunt Jemima's syrup, or even driving a Jeep Cherokee. When bias goes unchecked, or when bias is unchecked, it's reinforced. It can take over. It can form our policies, systems, and laws, sometimes with devastating consequences. What we may think is a small slight may not seem slight to the person who is feeling that slighting. Small injustices build on one another, creating larger ones. A slight here, an inconsiderate joke there. These are the building blocks that create serious structures of bias. It's policies that impact homeownership, immigration, who can legally marry, and the inherent bias that people who live in a different way than we do are not worthy of the same successes, joys, and rights that the rest of us share. Dividing us from them can be harmful, but sometimes, if used carefully, it can be helpful. As we near the end of the exhibition, we ask folks to do a self-audit. Retraining your brain isn't a box you tick. It's not blindly following your brain's not always helpful knee-jerk reaction to difference. It's asking yourself hard questions. It's having potentially difficult conversations with people who have different lived experiences and worldviews than you. It's allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable. We can build an us around activism. We can band together as a group of people who care, who want to recognize our biases, and to live with values of equity. This us can dismantle unfair systems and policies in our neighborhoods, nationally, even globally. Bias is human, but there's more to being human than being biased. There's also humanity and the strength that comes from awareness, motivation, and activism. So I'd like to say to folks that this is a community engagement project with a pretty cool exhibition attached to it. And now you're part of that. Maybe there's a piece from this exhibition that resonated with you, or there's a topic that you want to deepen your understanding of. Next slide. Thank you. The Smithsonian has an online learning platform called Learning Lab. You can find it at the link provided here. We have created custom collections of materials that build on the exhibition to help take some of the guesswork out of finding resources specifically about bias. Several organizations outside of the Smithsonian, along with several of the museums under our umbrella, have countless resources to help deepen people's understanding of bias, interrupting that bias, and diversifying learning experiences. As part of hosting the physical exhibition, we ask each host venue to facilitate at least 2 community engagement activities of their choosing. We want communities to think about the conversations they're ready to have in their neighborhoods, using the bias inside us to invite folks to gather and learn together. The Science Museum of Minnesota is our first host. Our year 1 tour takes us to April 2022, and we'll visit a total of 10 communities in North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Oh, lost my spot, sorry. While you'll be able to find us in traditional museum settings like this one, you'll also be able to find us in public libraries, universities, and even a shopping mall. So this isn't it for us. The Twin Cities is home for me. So there's a chance you may find me lurking in the Bias Inside Us exhibition before we pack up on April 4th to hit the road to our next venue, the National Czech and Slovak History Museum and Library in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And from there, please check our website, listed here, for dates to programming, news, and media as we move forward with this project. And finally, for those of you who want a taste of the exhibition without having to leave your home, we do have a brief video narrated by Laura Zell, the Bias Inside Us project director. Enjoy.
Bias. It's part of being human. It's inside all of us. Being aware of our bias helps us recognize its influence, and that awareness impacts our behaviors and worldview. Hi, I'm Laura Zell, guest project manager for the Bias Inside Us, a traveling exhibition and community engagement project. We are traveling across America, collaborating with communities to help people understand, reflect on, and talk about how bias affects all of our lives. This is a different kind of exhibition project, and our partnerships with communities is vital to its success. The Bias Inside Us is grounded in decades of social psychology research. This research has proven that bias is an automatic firing in our brains and can lead to both positive and negative outcomes. In the exhibition, we explore how the brain processes information and makes decisions, many that we are not even aware of. Our brains make millions of decisions every day. Most are automatic and triggered based on past experience. We may not be able to stop our brains from triggering biases, but we can check ourselves and take time to respond. Through compelling images, hands-on interactives, and powerful testimonials and videos, the exhibition explores examples of bias. It is present in the products we use every day, in social codes that guide how we treat each other, and in systems that keep unequal treatment in place. The Bias Inside Us invites us to do a self-assessment and reflect on where we may hold our own biases. We can disrupt and change our biases. The first step is to recognize that we all have it and that it shapes our culture. When we recognize our bias, we understand how it leads to unfairness in our communities. This can generate activism and positive change. Projects like The Bias Inside Us expose us to other ideas and groups outside our own. This exposure can lead to meaningful dialogue, greater empathy, and increased inclusivity. Bias is extremely powerful, but it doesn't dictate our destiny. I invite you to join us and learn how to retrain your brain. Come to the exhibition, participate in a community program, or visit us online at biasinsideus.si.edu. I promise you, it's worth your time.
That was wonderful. A wonderful presentation by both of you. Thank you so much to Joanne and Odia for joining us this morning and doing such a thoughtful walkthrough of our exhibitions at the museum. And as Joanne mentioned, we are open to the public today and will be open Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays for the foreseeable future. And you can always check out our booking process. It's all advanced booking at smm.org. So you can get a reservation to come in and visit the exhibitions. And as Odia mentioned, the Bias Inside Us is only going to be here through early April. So I encourage you to come in and see it. But in the meantime, I've just opened up the chat. And if you have a question for Odia or for Joanne, please do go ahead and chat that into the chat box and I will share that out with them. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to start by asking, I'll start with Joanne, but I have the question for Odia too, to just share thoughts on a piece of the exhibition or the development process that has special meaning to you. So we'll start with Joanne.
It's hard. I mean, in some ways, it's like a sum of its parts, like everything and how things fit together. I didn't mention, and maybe should have. So there's a section on education that talks about, and particularly in Minnesota, it's really critical because, as we all know, Minnesota is like 48th in educational disparities based on racial categories. So, in other words, students who are who present as BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color. Um, Students who have those identities are not doing as well. And so there's a section where it's a videotape with graphic information, but the videotape is done by the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center, which is at the museum, young people who are enrolled in that program, and they talk about all sorts of things: education, the policing in communities of color, George Floyd. They're just wise beyond, well, they're wise. And we have a lot to learn from young people and young people of that generation. So I guess that's something that I'm really excited about in the exhibition, and excited about as part of the updated process.
Odia, thoughts?
So I don't come from a museum background. I've been a public school teacher for 20 years. I worked for Minneapolis Public Schools for 9 years. So for me, I'm a teacher. So when we were building this, you know, and anyone, maybe parents feel this way, right? Like you've got this idea of what you want things to be, and once it happens, you're like, holy cow, this is amazing. So to me, it was all of these ideas and these hopes and these dreams of this project that then, like Joanne said, it's the sum of its parts. You see it all come together and it works, and it's exciting. And that the first time I saw it put together, I was like, holy cow, we did it. Like we created this amazing representation of all of the things we had tried to do. And so for me, again, being a teacher, it's those interactive pieces. It's the boxes that pull down. It's the brain that lights up. There's even a gamification piece where you can sort of role play. So for me, it's the hands-on stuff. It's listening to the voices. It's the media. All of that really tries to bring people in and make it more real. So not really one favorite thing. I kind of cheated, but I feel there's so much to be proud of, and I just can't wait to share it with you all.
Oh, that's a wonderful response, and I think we're all educators when we work in museums, and I agree with you. Those are elements that are just so compelling. So Sly has a question. How was the data from the food security collected? It indicated that close to 75% of Blacks experienced food insecurity as part of COVID. Was this data collected among people with certain income levels, or who worked in a certain sectors or lived in certain neighborhoods? I think this question should go to Joanne.
It's a great question, and I will have to get back to you on that because I don't know the answer. It wasn't. I can tell you that it wasn't collected from individuals, or we didn't go to specific neighborhoods. It's some source from some state agency, I would suspect. But I will get back to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I know that we always have so much to talk about at these virtual tours, and we always go over our time, which is wonderful. It just shows all of your enthusiasm, and I appreciate and value that. I did want to mention to you that if you're interested in community tours, we do have a community tour link, which I am now having trouble pulling up. Do you know offhand, Odia, what that is?
I
For more
do
questions.
not.
Okay, I'm gonna find it, and I am going to drop it in the chat. I thought I had it up, and I sure don't, but I always have to have at least one technical problem on our calls. So If you're interested in learning more in a community tour setting, I will drop the link to inquire about more information about that into the chat in just a moment. But I do encourage all of you to come to the museum and visit and see all the things we have to share, particularly these two exhibits, and then the Skin, Living Armor, and Green Card Voices, which all fit under the umbrella of our Science is All of Us initiative. I'm going to thank,
Aaliyah,
yes.
before you, I just want to make sure that we'll capture this question so that I can follow up with Sly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I capture all the content. And
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. So Sly, I will email you.
Great. Thank you for checking in about that. And then I do have one other favor I need to ask of all of you who are on the call today. As you know, I think this is our last live member appreciation program this month. And it's just been such a pleasure to reconnect with so many of you. And as we continue in this sort of virtual tour event space, I have a little poll that I've asked some of you to respond to already, but I'm going to share it again. We want to know what program time works best for you. So I've just shared a poll and you can just choose one of those answers. I'll keep it open for about 1 minute as to which time works best for you. So we found that virtual events generally are about an hour in length, and within that time frame, we're trying to figure out if mornings, afternoons, evenings are really the best time. So if you could please share your thoughts with that. I'll give it about 10 more seconds. Great, I'm seeing some great answers here. I'm going to go ahead and end that. All right, it looks like everybody is here for weekend mornings. It's funny, people usually respond with the time that they've just joined the call, but it's always useful information for me. I have one new message coming into the chat. Oh, no, I sure don't. Okay. Well, thanks everybody so much for joining us today. We hope to see you back in the museum very soon. Thank you so much for your membership support. I am still having trouble finding that group tour link, so I will send that in a follow-up message to everybody. We hope you'll join us at the museum either on your own or for a visit with your family or household members. Thank you so much to Joanne and Odia and members. Thank you so much for your member support. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful day.
Bye all.
Bye everyone. Thank you.